principle of it is, should people be allowed to say what they want? And I think that can be contagious to people as they start to understand it. Once people start to realize that a lot of government action is force, that they're really empowering people to decide what is okay or not okay, that usually leads to some people getting mistreated and some people abusing it, and more problems than solved.
Do you find that there are any particular issues that you're passionate about, for foreign policy, the Federal Reserve, where you can connect with your fellow co-stars, regardless of whether they're from the left or the right? I assume the left. But.
Well, it depends on the individuals, I think. But, they can get very frustrated, I think, if you talk about them and stating the principles. I like to debate them sometimes and aggravate them as well. So, sometimes I try to convert, and other times I just try to aggravate them. But I think that if you kind of stay in the logic of it, they usually always land in the same thing, which is, we have to try something. Or I just don't believe we can trust individuals that much. At which point I always say, well, who runs the government?
So we talked a little bit about the differences between Ron Paul and Rand Paul. What are some of the things that you like about Rand Paul?
I've gotten to know Rand through Ron, and I found him to be very consistent on a lot of the issues where liberty is concerned, and liked him very much. There were some things that I felt wasn't totally understanding as completely thorough, but I really enjoyed him. He's the the candidate that's currently running that I most sort of align with and sort of his thoughts and philosophies. But Ron was, for me, sort of the most consistent in sort of the tradition
right. Of liberty. Well, I think a lot of people in here are big Ron Paul fans as well.
Yeah.
Have you, as you're talking to your co-stars and as you're, as people, you find that they come to you with questions and they're curious? Are you known as a guy who's kind of outside the mold? You're not really a conservative. You're not a liberal.
Well, I don't know how much they really put into it. It's not with all co-stars. I don't. Some people just are not as engaging. It's not just co-stars. It's just people in everyday life, right? So it's fellow students or people that you work with. It's family members. It's different people that you have conversations with, right? So, I think if anything, you just try to, get them to kind of look at things maybe a little closer and, at that point, maybe try to have some consistency with the principles, right? So your foreign policy and domestic policy don't have to be the principles will change dramatically. The principle is that forceful interference leads to unintended consequences, and the same would apply kind of in both places, So it just depends on who you're talking to.
Absolutely. Have you noticed any difference, before you kind of became a little bit more open about your personal beliefs? A lot of politics, you don't talk politics, you don't talk religion. Have you noticed any pushback or anything?
I try to, for the most part, it's not as important to me. I think it's, nice to be able to say the things that you believe in, and, I don't know that it's beneficial to not be who you are, in order to be liked. I don't think that feels good for anybody. It shouldn't. So that was never a concern. But, like anything, there's some people that are more able to be open to hearing stuff. And I think there's a lot of people, too, that really don't think for themselves. They just kind of go along with what's popular. And they're almost, haven't really given a lot of critical thought to things. They're just, and then I think there's people that are just trying to keep their head above water, right? And they're just not informed of the issues. There's something interesting, I think, in economics as well as in these issues in politics where people almost get shut down. They have a fear of just sort of investigating things, and it's overwhelming to them. And it's almost like they have to feel a little bit like it's okay just to kind of look at stuff and not feel so traumatized by it.
No, I agree. So, one of the big issues that kind of wasn't getting a lot of attention until Edward Snowden, released disclosures to Glenn Greenwald. What was your take on that? Because there were certain people who considered him a traitor. There's certain people who consider him a hero, and that, compared him to like Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers. So what do you think about all those things?
I think Snowden was great. He was sharing information with the American people. you know, so he was letting us know just how far the abuse of liberty has gone. When like he was selling it to make money from someone who had bad intentions for the nation. So I really think that he was brave and pretty consistent with someone that cares about individuals' liberties, and that it was important for, it was a wake-up call, I think, to all of us, right, to find out just kind of how far they were going, correct. So I think he is a hero. I think he's a very brave person who's very principled, who, you know, took it upon himself to let the American people know. So the fact that the government responds, you know, strongly to it, kind of let you know, maybe they see us more as an adversary than what they would pretend.
Well, that's actually a good point. They labeled certain Ron Paul groups. I remember back in 2008, aging myself a little bit here, you know, not in a specific group, but someone on a watch list. So how do you think that you kind of can convince people to join a movement that's so ostracized sometimes by the government, obviously, who is threatened with, you know, getting their power limited?
Well, I don't know that I would say that my thing is to try to necessarily get out there and try to get people to join a movement. I find it, you know, important to be consistent with what your truth is, and to, you know, be direct about that in conversations with stuff. And, you know, I think that people, once they kind of get exposed or do stuff, if anything, a lot of times are surprised by some of the stuff, and it can possibly lead them to more things. I mean, I think that the message of individual liberty and peace is contagious. I think these people will agree.
So I think we have an opportunity. I'll take a break, and if there are any questions in the audience, make sure they're questions and not statements, though. We'll start up here at the front.
Have you ever tried to, I don't know if this is the right word, sneak some of your libertarian values into scripts? Movies have a pretty big influence on how people think, and a lot of movies are kind of directed by people from a more leftist perspective.
Sure.
So, have you ever tried that?
Yeah, I think, you know, funny enough, at the end of couples retreat, if you stay past the credits, we do a thing where we say we should audit the Fed. It's I think it's important to get consistent to the story and the characters for whatever they're doing. But yeah, I think that sometimes movies could be, you see it so many times, it's so heavy-handed that they come at it with sort of a political point of view as if it's 1,000% correct. And, you know, I always think that, you know, depending on the film, unless that's your point of view, that you're really just investigating those characters specifically and what's going on. But there has been sometimes, that being one of them, where it's been able to kind of have that. I'm sure just my viewpoints can seep through in some of those things as well if I'm contributing to the scripts or otherwise.
Way in the back, you got your hand up pretty high.
I'm wondering, because I didn't know about you being in our line of thought, and I knew about like Trey Stone and those guys at South Park. Who else is in Hollywood thinks the way, thinks freely, thinks the way you do?
Gosh, I don't know that there's not like an organized group that I haven't been invited. But I think that, you know, I think as time goes on, I think you guys can probably focus around campuses, right? Don't you feel more people are kind of coming along to some of these ideas as they see the failure of kind of, you know, people overstating stuff? So, you know, these are ideas that have been around, you know, for a while, thankfully, and I kind of think that, you know, a lot of people, you know, on the left, civil liberties are concerned, and they kind of see the failure of a lot of, you know, force and mandating start to move a little bit more this direction, that maybe, you know, foreign policy, you know, some of the neocons have started to kind of go, well, maybe this isn't the, you know, the best kind of doing it. So I don't know that there's any particular individuals in Hollywood necessarily. I always have people come up to me because I have spoken about it, and they always are very like quiet or hush hush, like, I'm so glad you said something, and I can't stand with you. Yeah, I just,
And you're not going to out those people that don't.
I mean, it's up to now. I got a kick out of it. Like, I can't say anything.
You, as or worth it?
Oh, yeah, I
I just think that you know, really hopefully raise your kids to, you know, think for themselves and have respect for both their own individual thoughts and other individuals, you know, and to really consider, you know, putting laws in place to make everything okay. So, you know, I feel like throughout history, there's always been, you know, a lot of things at the top that can be difficult. Probably in the scope of it, we're still probably pretty good here that we can discuss these things and do this. I think it's important that we are doing that, obviously, so that the pendulum doesn't go so far in that direction. But, you know, I'm somewhat optimistic. I feel like you'll see a lot of this stuff go bankrupt. It can't sustain itself. It's just a matter of when. I feel like more people are getting aware. I think you have to try to be smart so that you can kind of avoid some of the pain that comes with those things. And yeah, you know, I think you just want to encourage, like, if anything that you're teaching your kids is to, you know, take in information, think for themselves. And I think there is a challenge because you're up against, you know, such a system in place that kind of indoctrinates, if you will, that this is good and this is bad. But a lot of that for me is really laughable. You know, it's not very hard to sit down, if you can sit with someone individually and kind of point out just how crazy, you know, some of these things are, right? I feel bad for the kids that kind of are going there and their parents are just kind of sending them there. But I think a lot of kids also will kind of wake up within that at some point and say, this feels a little, right, this feels a little suffocating. Some of these ideas feels like it's really getting jammed down my throat, which usually is a good reason to kind of question it, right? Like why is every week, you know, global warming week or whatever.
Okay, in the middle, in the back. Yeah.
Have you had any blowback with the rules yet?
He just Kanye Wested you. The gentleman standing in the back. We'll go to you first.
We just saw this big thing with WikiLeaks happen, Sony emails, and how we see our current Democratic administration openly colluding with Hollywood for certain messages. And we just saw like Robert Downey Jr. in that interview getting accosted like, well, are you a liberal or what are your views and everything? What are your thoughts on kind of like this overt liberal bias that we see in Hollywood, and is there anything that can be really done about it?
Well, you know, I thought that they missed the boat on that email scandal. And I actually called some of the people that were involved in it when it happened. But I thought the real thing was the breaking into the privacy, and that even the people that were being spoken ill of in the emails, I thought could have come forward and said, look, you know, whether it's family members, people will talk shit about